My name is John Mattone. My guest today is Dr. Jack London. Jack is the executive chairman and chairman of the board of CACI Inc., a Fortune 1000 organization. Jack is a highly decorated senior executive who has been with CACI for 42 years. Decorated earlier in his career for outstanding military service in the Navy, and served many years as CEO of this organization before becoming executive chairman in 2007. I think you're going to be very interested to learn Jack's ideas on what it takes to be successful as a leader in business today. His focus in on character in the inner core, your values, how you think about things, your makeup, in terms of the drivers of ultimate success are without question. Jack's written a book that we're going to talk about. So without any further ado, I'm very honored and privileged to introduce Dr. Jack London.
How do you do?
Jack, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely, John.
Right.
My pleasure. Delighted to be here with you.
It's certainly my pleasure. It's my privilege to meet you.
Thank you.
We could spend hours. I know we could because we've already spent some time talking about the importance of character, which I want to get to in a second.
Sure.
Because you've written this incredible book on
you.
character.
Yeah.
But I'd like you, one of the things that we're trying to do with the show is the viewers are going to be current CEOs of organizations all over the world.
Wonderful.
And also future CEOs,
I understand.
so they can listen in on people like yourself who have gone through challenges and
Oh yeah, there's been a few.
right,
There's
a few,
been
just a few, right, and really learn from your experiences so they can accelerate their own development, start to think about things that maybe they haven't thought of before, and that's really the premise behind the show. It's great to have you with us.
Well, fair enough. I hope I can help in some way.
I know you can. I know you can. It would be great if you could talk a little bit about CACI.
Okay.
And give the viewers a sense of the organization.
Surely, yeah.
And then we'll go from there.
All right, fine. Well, CACI International, we're a New York Stock Exchange and Delaware corporation. Didn't start out that way, but we are now. The company's in its 53rd year. We in our 53rd year coming up. We were went into business in 1962, soon be in our third year,
Yes.
53rd year. And it was a small consulting outfit out of California in the digital simulation technology. So it was a technology-focused, high-tech, specialized kind of business in those days.
Yep.
Computer-based,
Yes.
obviously. The company came to this part of the country in the late 60s. I joined the company in 1972 it was. I was here after about 10 years. I've been here, I'm in my 42nd year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a wonderful journey.
It's fantastic.
And so I became Chief Executive Officer at about 1984, so I've been here about a dozen years.
Okay.
I had built, in the meantime, the largest and most profitable business, the best, really the best piece of business in the portfolio at that time.
Excellent.
Building it essentially around military requirements and needs in the information technology space.
Yes.
In fact, that goes back to what we call the Management Information Systems.
That's right.
And it was ADP. That's where we were in those days.
Yes.
And I was very successful in bidding and winning software development contracts and system contracts. We expanded very rapidly through and mostly, by the way, it was in the military logistics domain primarily. We've expanded significantly beyond that. Today we have a portfolio that incorporates telecommunications, communications network services, intelligence community work, which you read about some of the kinds of things we do. Very proud of that work. We do work around the world today. We have about 16,000 employees, about 3.7 billion in sales. We have a very healthy stock ownership, as you might imagine, New York Stock Exchange Corporation. We have a interested investor community that follows us very, very carefully.
Yes, yes.
And I would say we have a fine reputation in the market that we perform in. And basically, we're in the United States government services and information technology business.
Mm-hmm.
Significant amount of our business is with the Department of Defense.
Department of Defense,
But
yep.
also special other security-related, national security-related, Department of Homeland Security, for example, the intelligence community.
Yes.
We do business with the CIA, the NSA, all the intelligence communities that you're familiar with.
Fascinating.
And very proud of the work we do. We're very focused on technology types of contracts. We do a bit of consulting work, but mostly ours is technical work, technical solutions, engineering services.
Yes.
We're around the world. We have approximately 120 different offices throughout
All over the world.
All over the world.
Yep.
We have project activity, literally. The sun never sets on the project activity of CACI and its
Right.
staff and people.
Right.
So obviously very proud of that. We have, I would say, probably several thousand contract activities. Some of them are task orders. We have maybe 50 very large contracts that we work against. So that will give you characterization and feel for the business. Very competitive business.
Absolutely.
It's a very competitive, sometimes people get the misunderstanding that government contracting is somehow
It just comes in.
easy.
It just doesn't come in.
Yeah, no,
Not at all.
I beg your pardon.
Right.
We are very competitive.
Right.
We're very aggressive in pursuing our market. So maybe that gives you a feel for the company.
Right.
Our motto is ever vigilant. We're very focused on the need to be perceptive and aware and careful about what we do for our clients, for our employees,
Yes.
for our shareholders. So that's a little bit of a characterization. We are big on integrity. We have a culture of what I call integrity and ethics in this company. It's very foremost in our business activities. And it has served us quite well over the years. We have relatively few contract difficulties. Nobody's perfect. We do have difficulties from time to time, but we fix them promptly.
Yep.
Occasionally there'll be somebody that thinks that they can break the law or the rules and get away with it. And obviously even the CIA, I understand, has aspired to that's a mole that they've had. So you do have people that just somehow can't seem to find a way to behave properly, and
Right.
we address those issues when they come up. But,
Quickly. Yep.
quickly, and properly. So anyway, that's a feel, I think, for CACI.
I think that's excellent. Tell me about the essence of who you are. Just give me a sense of your upbringing. I mean, we don't have too long, but I'm fascinated,
No
because we were
resume.
talking before, obviously
Yeah.
we started the show, that you grew up in the Midwest, right?
Yes.
And those early years were foundational years for
Clearly, yeah.
who you are
Oh, yeah.
today. So talk a little bit.
Well, yeah, I was raised in Oklahoma. My parents on both sides are from colonial ancestors. They came over. We all are immigrants in one way.
Yes.
Mine were early immigrants, as opposed to later, and made their way by pioneer in the pioneer fashion. Covered wagons so forth. Oklahoma. I was raised and went to high school there. Oklahoma is a very interesting state. It has a very patriotic
Yes.
flavor to it. For example, I have ancestors, even back to the Revolution, that served the American people and what now is the American government. And I've had military people in my family. We had a lot of my relatives served in the Second World War.
Yes.
Some of them didn't make it back. I lost a cousin and an uncle, my mother's youngest brother. And I was very taken with the idea of military service, and had the opportunity, since modest circumstances, family didn't have enough money
You didn't
to
have a
put
lot
me
of
to
money.
college. Yeah,
Yeah.
we just didn't have it. I was
Right.
going to have to work my way through or get
Sure.
a scholarship. But,
Yep.
And so I wound up getting an opportunity, a scholarship to Princeton, a scholarship to the University of Oklahoma, and an appointment to the Naval Academy.
Fabulous.
So I chose the United States Naval Academy, class of 1959. Went through, graduated in the top quarter of my class, and went ahead into aviation, naval aviation, and chasing Soviet submarines.
You did that for a few years. Yeah.
Cuban Missile Crisis. I was down for the John Glenn recovery. These events in the 60s when I was in active duty. So that's a little bit of my background.
Right.
I went to the Naval Postgraduate School, have an operations master's degree, George Washington University, a doctorate in business administration with distinction, and all of those academic programs really turned out, in retrospect, fit very nicely with what eventually became my career here with CACI, which I'm very proud of the affiliation here.
Your vision to get a doctorate, was that something that was an early on vision, or was it something that evolved over time?
It evolved. I didn't, that wasn't sort of a starting point, but I began to realize that there were, in the first place, the Naval Academy degrees in those days were highly engineering oriented,
Absolutely.
scientific engineering,
Right.
military disciplines and requirements. And I did fine in that. Heavy engineering. I don't want to misconstrue
So you
that.
got a good technical mind.
Do very good. And then went to the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California.
Sure, yeah.
And received an operations research degree, which is a analytical, mathematically based type of way of looking at the world.
Yes.
Through analyses, and I got a very good grounding. In fact, a new vocabulary, really, in terms of how to approach decision making, which was a big input. But I soon realized that, well, when it turns out that my career in the United States Navy didn't have the opportunities upscale that I thought I was going to be able to have for a variety of reasons.
Sure, yep.
None of which has to do with anything except the war in Vietnam and things like that.
Yep.
I decided I wanted to go ahead for a doctorate level, that I could do that on the GI Bill. I had
Yes.
that available to me. Thank to the United States government. I'm
Excellent.
very appreciative of that, by the way. And I realized that the missing link in my upbringing from a career standpoint was the business side, finance, accounting, all of
The nuts and bolts,
nuts
right?
and
The nuts and
bolts
bolts
of
of
what
business.
makes
Sure.
business
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a very robust program
Yeah.
to round that part of my education out and pick up a doctorate level degree at the same time. So it all fit together, and quite frankly, I'm very blessed, and I'm thankful and appreciative of the opportunities that have been afforded to me. But all of those academic programs, at the time of my life I was doing them, which was the obviously academic, but then in the 20s and the late 20s and early
Right.
30s in my advanced degrees, fit. I'd say almost I couldn't have written a script that would have put them where they fit better in terms of what I wound up doing eventually.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you can wind that backwards, but the way it turned out was very fortuitous, and I'm very much appreciative, quite frankly.
Well, the academic training, I think, teaches the critical thinking skills.
Clearly.
And certainly with your academic training, I think that's clearly where you learn how to make better decisions through the critical thinking, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing like having to make them, but you learn a vocabulary, you learn a notion and concept, or I did anyway,
Yes,
and it was
yes.
a big takeaway for me.
Right, right.
There was another takeaway for me during those years. It was I got involved in very much interested in forecasting
Yes.
and looking at trends. And there was a fellow by the name of Herman Kahn at the Hudson Institute in those days, in the 60s.
Yeah.
It was very avant-garde in what he was doing in projecting economic patterns throughout the world. The Japanese expansion, issues with regard to oil. And I attended a seminar in Philadelphia for 2 or 3 days where Herman gave a tutorial on these matters. And I walked out of there a changed guy. I said, this is really
It's
important stuff.
predictive. It's all the predictive.
Endeavoring to look into the future.
Right, right.
And ever since then, even Nesbitt's book that came out, Megatrends,
Oh, sure,
book in
yeah.
the early, I guess it was the early 80s. But in any case, I spent a lot of my time and energy professionally in my career, in my role and position here at CACI, is endeavoring to look ahead,
Right.
to anticipate changes in technology, changes in the market space, changes in regulatory tax environments, all of the things that are bubbling around, and trying to anticipate and position CACI where it has a reasonable, an excellent or reasonable chance to prevail in these changes that are coming to us. So I've anticipated. I got into the mergers and acquisitions
Yes, you
business
did,
that
significantly.
way. I got into network communications that way. I got into the intelligence business that way. There's things that we've anticipated and looked ahead. We're still doing the intel side. The recent acquisition we had.
Well, one of the things that I see in really successful CEOs, and you're currently not the CEO, you're the executive chairman, the
yes.
chairman of the board.
I stepped down in 2007 after 23 years.
Yep, and so you've got just an incredible amount of experience. One of the things that I see is that you've got to be visionary. You've got to be anticipatory, right?
Exactly.
As a leader.
Yeah. Oh,
Now,
my
it doesn't matter what organization we're talking
Oh,
about
I
here.
think that's absolutely. In
And
fact, it's really a driving requirement, in my humble opinion.
absolutely.
You've got to be able to think ahead.
You got to be able to think ahead, and that's hard work for a lot of people, right?
Oh, yeah, it's uncomfortable.
It is, without question.
Can be.
Want to get your concept of how do you look at leadership? And again, we talked for a while before we started the show. And we're so aligned, Jack, in our philosophies, especially around character. And you've written this book on character, which we should hold up here. Character, the ultimate success factor, is just so powerful. And I'd love for you to hit a couple of these concepts here as it ties into leadership.
Yeah.
What is your definition of leadership, and how is character tied into exhibiting leadership strength?
Well,
What would you say?
John, that's wonderful. First, I think of leadership as distinctly different from management.
Yes.
And of course, that's fairly traditional academic
Yep.
perspective and otherwise, but
Yep.
I really mean it. I think that leadership has to do with defining where you want to take the organization.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with standard setting. It has to do with being the role model.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be able to do the things and stand up for the things that count and or have value, and let your people, your organization understand that that these views you have are valuable and will prevail in terms of taking the organization
Yes.
to a successful future.
Yes.
It's completely different than rule setting.
Mm-hmm.
Leaders, I think we talked about vision, anticipating. That's a big deal for me. The other piece of it, though, that which you introduced the idea of character, there's only one kind of leader, in my opinion, that will be successful, and that is one who sets the standards of behavior and performance for the organization. And I think today, one of the things that we see in the problems we've had with the Enrons and WorldComs and some of the unfortunate circumstances was that there was a lip service to integrity, but there was a under the table, a wink kind of thing that went on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, to me, John, perfect examples, illustrations of real significant character flaws.
Absolutely.
And without getting into names and so on, in fact, I do like to emphasize that there's a difference that there are differences between individual character and organizational character.
Yes.
But you cannot have an organization that has character, good character, strong character, without the individuals.
Totally agree.
So you can talk about the character of organizations, you can talk about the character of individuals. I think the idea of character, by the way,
Yes.
my own view of
Absolutely.
that word and my own notion of definition is it's really a sort of accumulation of the ethics, values, morals, doing the right thing, being able to exhibit that and live that and manifest all those traits is what I call character.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be done in a viewpoint that is agreed to by the common definition or agreement of doing the right thing.
Right.
And a lot of people have said to me, Jack, well, what is the right thing? How do you know what the right thing is? Well, obviously there can be challenges.
Sure.
I wouldn't dispute that for a second. But I think the notion by your conscience, your indication, your views, your values, what you've seen as people you admire for having done the right thing,
I agree.
is what I look at as character.
It's very powerful, and as we were saying also, all these books on leadership, the fact that in that area of leadership, I mean, I do a lot of speaking on leadership, I do a lot of executive coaching on leadership. There's so many books on leadership, Jack. Why do we continue to write books, and why do we continue to hire people like me to speak? Well,
Because we need it.
we need it, and what I see is that organizations and CEOs and senior leadership teams are not moving the needle enough
How interesting. Yeah.
around leadership. And
Well, you'd see that, John. I sort of read the newspapers, but
Yeah.
you probably see it up close and personal. Yeah.
yeah, and this whole notion of and we were talking about this as well, the inner core, the outer core relationship, that the inner core is character and the stuff that,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you've identified as being so
Yeah.
critical in driving ultimate success, that we need more of it. We're lacking in it.
John, this book, the foreword was written by Norman Augustine,
Sure.
the former chairman CEO of Martin Marietta,
Yes.
and then Lockheed Martin.
Mm-hmm.
And Norm points out the implications of character flaw,
Yes.
and how important the notion of character is in running a business.
Right.
And there's probably not any more successful aerospace, United States government weapon systems technology organization across the board than Lockheed Martin.
Right.
And so John, I got to tell you, by having Norm do a piece for me, I was very appreciative. He's a good friend of mine.
Absolutely.
Also, Roger Staubach
Mhm.
has written a endorsement for my book.
Right.
And of course, Roger is a
Naval
leader
Academy.
in his Naval Academy,
Absolutely.
and
Great quarterback.
a great quarterback,
Successful.
and a successful businessman,
Absolutely.
based on his integrity, his reputation, sure, but he also is committed to his people.
Absolutely.
Now, the other two people put their name on my book are former Vietnam POWs, Commander Everett Alvarez and Colonel Lee Ellis, both good friends of mine. Both good friends of mine.
Fabulous.
And they have endorsed the notion of character as I'm presenting it in this book. It comports with their circumstances, the things that they went through when they were incarcerated for all those years. Everett, Ev Alvarez,
Mm-hmm.
8.5 years. Colonel Lee Ellis, I think it was 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
But both of these guys, you got to think about it. If there isn't a test of what your character is ultimately, because what they wanted to do was return with honor.
Mm-hmm.
Their mantra that was set up by Stockdale, Admiral Stockdale, who was the senior prisoner, was to return with honor. So they maintained the dignity and character no matter what. Now there was some that weren't able to maintain that standard,
Right.
and we lament that.
Right.
But the great majority of those men that went through that ungodly experience did it because of this right here. So it has a value that transcends
It's huge.
any. It's not business or government or military. The whole idea works for all of us.
It's huge in all aspects of our life, our children, and so on and so forth. Let me ask you this: how do you teach this concept to your executives here at CACI? Most organizations, as you know, as they begin to develop their current leaders and future leaders, they put a lot of the leaders in university development programs,
Sure.
management training programs, this and that.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of those programs don't address what it is that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So how do you teach this concept that's so vital to the success of leaders in CACI? How do you teach that here?
Well, I think you have to first start with people that have the right ingredients.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean,
Get the right people in the door.
Yeah,
Promote the right
the
people.
first thing is, in my humble opinion, is having people that basically are receptive to these ideas.
Absolutely.
Maybe they haven't been able to, for one reason or other, formulate them or organize the ideas or maybe crystallize them, but they have the basic understanding of following the rules, doing the right thing, and comporting in that sense. So you start there.
Yes.
And then the other thing is, I'm the Energizer Bunny. I never stop.
You're never retiring. I know that.
Well, who knows? But as long as I can add
No,
value
you've got great
in
energy.
a significant way, I do enjoy it. I love this work. I love what we do for our clients, the fascinating work we do.
Yes.
Important, fascinating work, valuable work, life-saving work in many circumstances. But I just think that what we're trying to do here does have a theme, does have a message, and we've enjoyed doing it. So anyway.
I've got a a particular law that I wrote about in my book,
Okay.
Intelligent Leadership. There's 16 laws, and I'm going
Okay.
to say it, and I want to get your response
Sure,
to it.
yeah.
Okay? I'm fascinated to get your response to this. And these aren't these aren't the exact words, but the theme is that the basic law of if you're going to be successful, you must fail first. Okay?
Okay.
All right, let me finish.
All right, sure.
But the greatest irony of leadership is that very often success is the first step to failure. How does that hit you?
Oh, wow. Wow.
What do you think?
Well, I think that there's a lot of value in what you're trying to communicate, that it's kind of the lessons learned kind of idea, I think.
Yep.
If I follow the
Yes.
thrust of your
Yep.
argument or thesis. I would agree with that completely.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to have a period where you learn the value of good decisions
Right.
and the value of these attributes we're talking about here.
Mhm.
And sometimes people can wind up not having had that experience
Absolutely.
and sort of get into a position where they wind up in a significant leadership role somewhere in some corporation or something, and they'll be tempted and to cut corners or something like that, and wind up with fraud charges or embezzlement and so
Yeah.
forth. I mean, we read about it
True.
in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere, where people have broken the law and,
Without
gotten
question.
caught.
And
you
they
know?
do it once. They do it once.
Yeah,
They get away with it.
Get away with it.
And they do it again.
Oh, yeah.
And they do
Bernie
it.
Madoff, for example, unbelievable
Dennis
situation.
Kozlowski, Tyco, years
That's
ago.
right, yeah. That's the same situation, and tragic.
Very, very sad.
You're talking about how do you teach it. I think you find the right people,
Yes,
and then you persist in having that be a standard. You
absolutely.
set a standard, and then you encourage people to be a role model.
Mhm.
I haven't tried to be a role model. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I don't profess to have a perfection. We're not talking about perfection here.
No.
We're talking about aspirations, commitment, endeavoring,
Belief.
belief
Mhm.
to continue to improve yourself.
Mhm.
I happen to be a Mason, Scottish Rite Masons, and
Mhm.
one of the things that we have in that fraternity
Mhm.
is the notion of improving ourselves
Yes.
at all times and working for tolerance and improvement. And so there's a little thread of that philosophy that's in here as well.
You're energizing
Yeah.
me right now, Jack.
Well,
You're energizing me.
Well,
I
don't know what
love
to
this
say, John.
profession. I get so moved when I hear
well, it works.
it does work.
That's the key.
That is absolutely
Really
the key.
honest to Pete works.
So let me, there's an excerpt in your book. And I'm gonna, for the viewers, I'm gonna read it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I want to get your reaction to this.
All righty. Sure.
Character provides the moral compass that keeps you moving in the right direction. You are the only constant factor in your life. We all chart our own path, confronting our own challenges and pursuing our own goals. Not everyone is on the same path, but the most critical success factor for everyone is character. Unfortunately, not everybody knows this or knows it's the one thing that we have complete control over. That's powerful.
I believe it. It's also believed by people like Ev Alvarez and Lee Ellis.
Absolutely.
And they were tested in a crucible that it's hard for you and me to imagine.
Right.
Hard for me to imagine.
Absolutely.
8 years incarceration, tortured, and all the rest that they went through. So,
Strength.
but they controlled who they were. No matter what their captors did to them, they ultimately controlled who they were.
You know what you're talking about? I think
You own your character,
You
and
do.
nobody can take it away from
I
you.
totally agree. And what is very powerful to me is, and I see this in a lot of the younger executives, maybe you've seen this as well, that fearlessness and courage are different things. Fearlessness, right?
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
exists within us.
Yes.
But people of courage, like the people that you're talking about,
Oh,
they were
yeah.
able to translate that fearlessness, right, into
Yeah.
action. And they were able
Yes.
to execute it.
To live it, yeah.
They live it, absolutely.
Under the unbelievable circumstances. I did a foreword to another book called Lessons Learned from the Hanoi Hilton, and I wrote the foreword to that. And it's interviews of a number of POWs.
Mhm.
and the lessons they learn in their post-incarceration, their after POW life,
Yes.
in business and in government and elsewhere. And a lot of the success they claim and they attribute to the tests,
Yes.
the tests of character
Yes.
and resolve that they came through and taught them.
Yes.
That by coming through it that way,
Yes.
that was a wonderful formula for how to live their life.
Absolutely.
That's really powerful. That's powerful.
It's unbelievably powerful. Let me ask you this. I want to get your perspective on developing younger leaders and the need to develop our future leaders. There's a huge need in all walks of our lives, in our governments, in our institutions, schools, to develop stronger leaders. We have so much talent in the younger people.
For sure.
What would you recommend to the younger people who aspire to leadership, which is a noble profession?
Absolutely.
It is a noble profession.
I
The
know.
chance to touch other people and
Yeah.
help them become the best they
Whether
can
it's
be.
in government or industry or military or religious service or community service, yeah.
So given your incredible experience and successes you've had and also the many challenges that you've had to overcome, because it hasn't been a straight line, has it? It hasn't been-
No.
I mean, a lot of setbacks. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah. Some
so what would you
very
recommend?
traumatic, hard times.
Very much so, and in my own business as well. You know, I talk about it all the time.
Well, I like to separate business success from character.
Yeah,
Because you can have a noteworthy, or remarkable, and genuinely good character that
Yes.
makes some bad decisions in business.
true.
And I don't think they're tied
Commingled. Right.
in that sense.
Right.
And I also think about the character is having good character and being successful in how you've lived your life is its own reward.
Absolutely.
And that perhaps is a more esoteric or a philosophical perspective, but I think it's fundamental.
It is fundamental. It's powerful. But let's go back to the younger people.
Yeah, okay,
I'm
yeah.
fascinated in. I mean, if we had younger people standing here today, they're sitting here, and you said, okay, here are the 3 or 4 recommendations I have to the Generation X, Generation Y people, the younger people, on how to become great leaders that we need. What would be 3 or 4 recommendations that
Well,
you
I
would
can think
suggest?
of several things. I think I'd start off with the basic message of this book is that you own your own character.
Yes.
You absolutely have control of who you become and who you are.
Yes.
And to pitch it on to somebody else is really making excuses.
Right.
You know, so that's the first thing, to get really down.
Excellent.
To really understand that you can control your destiny by the decisions you make.
Absolutely.
The next thing I would say is seek small successes or little achievements,
Mm-hmm.
so you get the taste of it.
Absolutely.
Success builds on success. Success breeds success, and I've talked to that in here in the book as well.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important to get those the path established
Absolutely.
and to feel good about it. I think the third thing I might mention, John, is decision making as such, and based in a good character environment, an ethical environment, decision making. I see and have seen people that I knew had great intelligence
Yes.
and lots of capability, but were inhibited by the fact that they were reluctant to make decisions, or in some cases, frankly, couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think learning to make decisions and how to go about it, how to do your own, develop your own method for analysis.
Mhm.
And I have some rules of thumb that I use,
Yep.
little things that looking at downside risk and
Absolutely.
there's some
Yep.
little metrics
That you can use. Yep.
notional. Yeah, that sometimes I'm using publicly, sometimes
Yep.
I'm using with a lot of data, sometimes I use them just heuristically. I mean, it depends on what the circumstances are, obviously. So I think that so the idea of recognizing that you own yourself, get a path of success started, learn how to make decisions, and I think the fourth thing I would say is persistence, determination. Develop a notion of commitment, and that goes back, John, to get into and doing things that you enjoy doing, that you feel good about doing. Because if you get off into a track that where you don't have that psychic income, that feeling of accomplishment, which is, I think, very important. It's been very important to me. I believe that to be fact for all human beings. but I-
Honestly, me too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the thing that defines why I relaunched my business 3 years ago,
Sure.
is I was doing very, very well financially, but I decided to give up a salary to go back and do what I know I was put on the earth to do.
And then probably enjoy.
And I love it. You know,
Professionally-
I feel it, right? And so
and
you're talking,
emotionally,
that's
yeah.
what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, see, I love this business. You say,
Right.
why do you love this?
It's a feel.
It's a feel. I enjoy what we do. I enjoy knowing about it. I worked technical projects for years and years, several decades, so I do have a feel for really
Right.
what it means to deliver to a
Right.
customer.
Right.
And to also occasionally not quite get it right and have to fix it in the proper way. And I believe in what we're doing for the American taxpayer, for the military people. I think we're doing a value add.
Mhm.
I think, and I know that we are of distinction and service in what we do. So I feel good about that part of it.
Absolutely.
And I'm confident I wouldn't be able to bring the enthusiasm if I didn't believe what we're doing really was important
Isn't
and
it?
a value add.
It's powerful.
Well, it's also a blessing, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to have gotten involved this way.
You're humble. It's a beautiful virtue. I love it when I see it. I don't see it as much as I'd like in the C-suite, honestly.
Okay, well,
I love your passion. I love your energy. The people at CACI, I'm sure, are very energized by the leader of this organization and the pace and the mood that you set.
well, I have
Every day.
I have a great relationship with our chief executive officer,
Yes.
and I must tell you, he subscribes to everything we've discussed, and perhaps would have a few dimensions he could add to it. Very enthusiastic, and well, what happens, John, is people see that this works. That may not work everywhere.
Right.
I'm not sure about that.
Right.
It's you know, formulas, organizational formulas and cultures can be different and are different in different places, but I know what's worked for us.
Mhm.
And I'm very confident that the future is tied to our continuation, our success in being able to deliver and develop this kind of a culture and sustain it based on character and integrity, ethics, and doing the right thing, frankly.
So,
In fact, in our business, if you don't, you have a high likelihood of not making it in business.
mhm.
Your enterprise can run into real problems, and I've seen that around town, so to speak, and some of our competitors. They've had significant setbacks and failures, you know.
You're totally engaged in your mind, in your heart, and your soul. You've got three elements operating. And we don't know each other that well. I mean, we spent some time before the show.
Yeah, right.
And, I mean, I knew it then, but it's coming out even stronger now. And when you engage your heart, mind, and soul, you engage your whole person in
For
the
sure.
pursuit of excellence, in the pursuit of achievement,
That's right.
and having breakthrough results for an organization, but also at the end of the day, when you look back, and you go to bed at night, you look back on your day and you say, you know something, I delivered it. And you've been doing that for a number of years, where you
Yeah.
can put your head down on the pillow, right?
Yeah.
And say that, I wasn't perfect,
Yeah. Well,
Right?
sometimes it's pretty uncomfortable, but, you
Yep.
know, when you make mistakes. But I've never been, I can say this, I've never been ashamed of what I've done, or we've
Mhm.
done. I've regretted some mistakes that we
Mhm.
corrected, but
Mhm.
there's a difference being ashamed is you know that you deceived or you're improper. Or,
Right.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
you did something that you really knew better.
so
So,
your sub-brand, being vigilant,
Yes.
applies to the business.
Ever vigilant, that's right.
But
Yeah,
it
our motto.
certainly does apply as a professional,
Yeah, it's clearly, yeah.
right? As
Very
a
important,
person, you gotta be vigilant. I
We
mean,
had that motto, and it's not, we
love
chose
it.
that 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah,
Actually, yeah, about 10 or 12. And it's something that served us well because it conveys to anyone who hears the term, it conveys who we are and what we're about.
absolutely.
It's not a technology issue. It's not a marketplace issue. It's a behavior and it's a character issue of watching what's going on and taking care of our clients, of our employees and their future, of our shareholders and their value and their investment, and the general public. So we have we've pretty well built our ethos around our culture and our ever vigilant motto.
I can
And
see.
it's related.
With
Our culture and character are broader issues, but the ever vigilant fits in that.
I can see why your organization's unbelievably successful. I can see why you're unbelievably successful. I'd like to kind of throw it back to you, really to conclude our time here. It's been incredible.
Enjoyed it, John. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jack, it's been incredible, but I'd like to, if you could just let the viewers know, I mean, what would be a lasting comment to, you know, the CEOs who are going to watch this and future CEOs? What would be the lasting comment, message that you would have for them?
Actually, it's kind of easy.
Yeah.
I do believe that the notion of character, as we described it, is a formula for success.
Yes.
I think it is the ultimate success factor. And I would add a comment underneath that
Mhm.
is never compromise yourself.
Love that.
Never compromise yourself in these issues. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And whenever you face a temptation, you'll know if you've compromised yourself.
And it's interesting, you're right, because it really is a mental construct, right? But it's
yeah.
a feeling as well.
Oh, yeah.
You can't
Oh, yeah.
compromise.
Yeah,
It's a
right.
conviction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Once
goes back to the courage.
once you do, you'll know that you've done the wrong thing.
Yes.
At least that's my view of it. So I think it is really the ultimate success factor. That's what I've said in this book, and I actually I thought a lot about how to describe it in a sound bite.
Yes.
And I believe that this formula works. It'll work for anybody who commits to it. That's what I believe.
I'm moved by that. It's been fabulous. It's been an honor, privilege.
John, thank you for this.
Thank you so much,
Great
Jack.
to meet you and spend some time with you.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Appreciate
Bye.
it.